Welcome to the Film Geezers podcast. Hello and welcome to the Film Geezers podcast. I'm Robbo. I'm joined as always by Cheeto.
Hello.
A couple of weeks ago, our podcast, we covered the greatest opening scenes or intros in films, and so today we're going to talk about the actual outros or the closing scenes. And what I'm going to do is when we post this podcast, I always add a post onto the website filmgeezers.com, and what I'll do is I'll link to all the videos that we're going to be, or the films we're going to be talking about today, so you can actually watch the outros. It's possible you may not have seen some of the films that we're talking about today. So, why is the last scene in a film always so important? Because it's the last thing the audience are left thinking about. So, I don't know about you, it's frustrating when a good film disappoints really with a poor or weak ending.
Yeah.
A great ending should leave an audience thrilled, shocked and thoroughly satisfied. In some cases, it ends on an unexpected twist. So, the plot twist happens right at the ending of the film. Which kind of changes the whole film in some ways, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Sometimes it ends on a thrilling action moment, or it just perfectly wraps up the story. And in some films, they don't have an ending, which I quite like actually.
Yeah.
When they leave it on an open ending or a cliffhanger, where it's up to the audience to decide or to think about what might have happened. So I want to put you on the spot again and get you to go first.
I'll go first. Okay. My first film is Psycho. Psycho is a 1960 thriller film directed by Alfred Hitchcock. The plot centres on an encounter between on-the-run embezzler Marion Crane, played by Janet Leigh, and Shy Motel proprietor Norman Bates, played by Auntie Perkins, and its aftermath, in which private investigator Milton Arbogast, played by Martin Balsam, Marion's lover Sam Loomis, played by John Gavin, and her sister Lila, played by Vera Miles, investigate the cause of her disappearance. The ending. As Lila and Sam go to the Bates Motel to investigate the disappearance of Marion, the plans for Lila to talk to the mother in the Bates mansion and for Sam to distract Norman. Norman becomes suspicious and knocks Sam out. We cut to Lila looking around the house. As she comes downstairs, she spots Norman bombing his way up the outside stairs towards her position. She hides on the basement stairs as Norman makes his way up to the second floor. She's about to make her way back up and out of the house when she spots the basement door. Lila makes her way down into the basement and is greeted with another door. She makes her way through the door and is shocked to see Mrs. Bates sat in a chair in the corner of the room, facing away from her. She makes her way towards Mrs. Bates and calls her name. She taps her shoulder and Mrs. Bates turns around. She is revealed to be dead, a corpse in fact. The camera cuts to Lila as she jumps back in horror and lets out a blood-curdling scream. In doing this, she hits a light bulb in the room. She turns to the door and we can hear footsteps coming towards her. We see Norman rush into the room, him wearing his mother's clothes and wig, holding a huge kitchen knife in his right hand. Bernard Herrmann's iconic Psycho score filling the scene. Norman has a massive grin on his face, like he really enjoys what he's doing. He runs towards Lila but is intercepted by Sam, who grabs a knife and intervenes. We get shots of Lila, Mrs. Bates' corpse, and her wig on the floor. At the police station, the psychiatrist explains how he has a split personality, how his mother has taken over his mind. When he kills, he is his mother. He asks for a blanket, and we get the iconic speech from Mrs. Bates. It's sad to see when a mother has to speak the words that condemn her own son, but I couldn't allow them to believe that I would commit murder. They put him away now, as I should have, years ago. He was always bad, and in the end, he intended to tell them I killed those girls, and that man. As if I could do anything except sit and stare, like one of his stuffed birds. Well, they know. I can't even move a finger, and I won't. I'll just sit here and be quiet, just in case they do suspect me. They're probably watching me. Well, let them. Let them see what kind of person I am. I'm not even going to swat that fly. I hope they are watching. They'll see, and they'll know, and they'll say, why she wouldn't even harm a fly. Obviously, we get the it's called a Kubrick stare, isn't it? Mm-hmm. Very famous shot we see in multiple movies of Andy Perkins. He just when he says she wouldn't even harm a fly, he just looks into the camera in such a devious, like, evil way, and then cut to Marion's car being recovered from the lake, and the film ends. Well, I think this is one of the best ending scenes. First off, this whole ending scene is tense from start to finish. The fact that it takes so long for Mrs. Bates' corpse to turn around, it certainly makes your anxiety levels rise. And also the fact we can hear Norman's footsteps approach the door before we finally see him for the first time in his mother's dress in full light. It truly is heart-racing stuff. This is the perfect ending to this film because it really does show us the type of character Norman Bates is, and this ties in the ending. It showcases one of the best lines in movie history in the Harm a Fly speech. We learn so much about Norman, about his mother's personality has taken over him, and you're like, yep, now the full movie makes sense. I love how Alfred Hitchcock is able to leave what's going on a mystery until we see Norman in all his glory. This makes for a tense ending, and it truly puts you on the very edge of your seat. Like I said before, parts of the movies don't even make sense until the end. This is truly a skill only some have, and Hitchcock certainly has it. We get Bernard Herrmann's great score throughout the ending, and the ending wouldn't be anywhere near as good without it. And those are my reasons. I don't know if you want to add anything or...
No, I think it was I remember when I first saw it. It was a really truly terrifying plot twist.
Yeah, it was. Because Hitchcock really did hide it. And I know now sometimes it in certain scenes it does show us age, but he did really hide it well, didn't he? Yeah. The fact, I remember the first time I watched it, I just don't know why. There just was something off about the scene, and seeing Lila into the room and seeing Mrs. Bates there, you just knew something wasn't right, didn't you? And obviously it turned out to be that she was a corpse, and she's been dead for the last couple of years, isn't it?
And there's the ambiguity. Did he kill her? Did she die of natural causes? Did he finally have enough of his overbearing mother? And because I know previously in the film they go to the sheriff, deputy sheriff, don't they? And he says that Mrs. Bates has been buried for the last 10 years or something. Then he's like, well, if that isn't Mrs. Bates, who is that? So there's a mystery up in the air, but Hitchcock plants it. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't, maybe she is dead, maybe she isn't, and who the hell is that in the house? But no, absolute iconic ending, and it's kind of a two-pronged ending. I've included the Mrs. Bates scene and the Harm a Fly speech, just because that speech is so iconic with the like I said, the Kubrick stare. But no, brilliant movie ending, and that's why it's on my list. Good choice.
Right, thank you.
Okay. So my first one is the 1956 Western, The Searchers, directed by John Ford. Now, Searchers is considered one of the best Westerns ever made, if not one of the best films ever made. And it stars John Wayne, and as Ethan Edwards. He's a Civil War veteran who, after an 8-year absence, returns to his brother's Aaron's ranch in West Texas. When cattle belonging to a neighbour are stolen, Ethan accompanies a group of rangers to retrieve them. Discovering that the theft was a ploy to draw the men away from their homes, Ethan returns to Aaron's homestead, where he finds it in flames, and Aaron, his wife Martha, and their son Ben are dead, and Debbie and her older sister Lucy have been abducted. Later, Ethan finds Lucy brutally murdered and presumably raped. This begins Ethan's 5-year search for his abducted niece Debbie, his only companion being Debbie's adopted brother Martin Pauly. They determine that Debbie is being held by Comanche Chief Scar and is living as one of his wives. Ethan and Martin enter the Comanche camp, and Ethan's kills Scar, and they rescue Debbie. The question throughout the whole film is what Ethan will do when he finds Debbie. You're never sure if he's going to take her home or kill her, as she's been living with a Comanche. In the end, Ethan sweeps her up in his arms and says, "Let's go home, Debbie." The two climb onto Ethan's horse and ride back to civilization. Ethan rides up to an old homestead and is greeted on the porch by smiling faces. Only this time, Ethan and Debbie are met by old friends, as most of their relatives were murdered in the Comanche raid. When the two approach the house, the settlers shower Debbie with affection, but Ethan's left behind watching silently as the ranchers escort Debbie inside. We see Ethan holding his arm against his side, framed in the door. He's staring inside, forgotten by his friends and family members. He turns and walks off into the distance, the door closing behind him, leaving us with one of the most bittersweet movie endings ever. So, I think that the doorway is a brilliant device to illustrate how Ethan is trapped between two worlds, the outlaw West and civilization. He's a throwback to an older time, a more violent age when the frontier was still wild. Ethan is a loner, a desperado who's broken his fair share of laws, and isn't above shooting a man in the back. He's not cut out for family life, and now that mission is over, he's outlived his purpose. When Ethan returns from his journey, he discovers a Texas that's become a more peaceful place. Only Ethan can't bring himself to settle down. He doesn't belong in this civilized world, and he really isn't even welcome there. None of Ethan's friends or family members invite him inside, and the door closes to lock him out. There isn't anywhere for Ethan to go. He isn't welcome anywhere. Much like the dead Comanche, Ethan is fated to wander forever between the winds. So, I don't know if you've seen...
No, I've never seen it,
So it kind of opens in a similar way. He rides up, he's greeted by his family, it's all framed in the doorway, the exterior being brightly lit and the interior just being dark. So yeah, it's a brilliant ending to... Because he basically, he's been on this 5-year mission to find his niece. He finally finds her, brings her home, and he realises then that's it. He's really no place for him. Yeah. And so he just turns and walks away with sort of somber music playing over the end. And it does actually tug at the heart. It really does. So I think that's one of the more brilliant endings, I think.
Yeah, I know it's a film that is regarded very, very highly, so I do have to watch it. But yeah, I'll get around to that soon. Good choice. Right, my next is Die Hard. Die Hard is a 1988 action thriller film directed by John McTiernan. The plot follows New York City police detective John McClane, played by Bruce Willis, who is caught up in a terrorist takeover of a Los Angeles skyscraper, headed by Hans Gruber, played by Alan Rickman, while visiting his estranged wife. The ending. John makes his way down the corridor towards Hans Gruber, gun in hand, him having a major limp in his step. He yells at Hans, "So that's what this is all about, a fucking robbery." Hans, holding John's wife Holly, with a gun to her head, tells John to put down his gun. John asks Hans why he nuked the whole building. Hans explains that when you steal 600 million, they will find you, unless they think you're already dead. He once again tells John to put down his gun. John, looking defeated, reluctantly puts down his gun. Holly is shook by this and displays a very concerned look. John puts his hands on his head and says, "You got me." Hans rather patronisingly explains how John is still a cowboy and how Americans are all alike. He then goes on to say how this time John Wayne does not walk off into the sunset with Grace Kelly. John, with his response, "It's Gary Cooper, arsehole." Hans then tells John to zip it with the jokes. John says, "You would have made a pretty good cowboy yourself, Hans." In response to this, Hans says, "Oh yes, what was it you said to me before? Yippee-ki-yay, motherfucker." Hans is ready to shoot John, but stops at John's laughter. Hans himself begins to laugh, also laughing as Eddie, another one of the terrorists. As the guys are laughing, the camera pans to behind John. A handgun is taped to his back. John yells, "Holly," to which he jumps out of the way. John quickly grabs a gun and shoots Hans, knocking him back. He then kills Eddie with a quick shot to the head. John finishes with blowing the end of his gun and saying, "Happy trails, Hans." Hans falls out the window, but manages to grab hold of Holly. We see a couple of shots of Al on the floor, also his POV of the whole ordeal. We cut to John trying to pry Holly away from Hans. This is when we are greeted with the iconic POV slow motion shots. Hans, still holding onto Holly, raises a gun and is about to shoot. John is able to take off Holly's watch. In doing so, this makes Hans lose his grip. We then see Hans from John's POV in freefall, pure terror on his face. We then cut back to Al's POV and we hear Hans' body hit the floor. We see the aftermath of the events as John and Al finally meet in person. They hug each other, laughing hysterically. As John is being yelled at by Deputy Police Chief Dwayne T. Robinson, we hear screams in the background, and Carl, one of the terrorists, arises and aims his gun ready to shoot John. By the way, he was already presumed dead at this point. John ducks along with Holly, and Carl is shot. Who shot him, we don't know. It is revealed to be Al, and then the movie ends. And the reasons why this is on my list is because you look like you're about to say something.
No,
you always come in with like a random thing. It's like, you know what I mean? It's a brilliant ending in which it kind of has a different tone. The film is completely balls to the wall action. This ending is a tight, intense affair where we really focus on the characters, and it completely works. Bruce Willis is amazing in this scene. Obviously he's amazing in the whole film, but we're only focusing on endings. He portrays the character John McClane so well, even when he's facing death. He can't help but crack jokes and make light of the situation. Like Bruce Willis, Alan Rickman is also brilliant in this scene. He is as witty as ever, but he still keeps that dark, meticulous way about him. One minute you're laughing with him, the next you're thinking, what an absolute psycho. This just goes to show how great of an actor he was. I love the iconic POV, slow motion shots of Hans Gruber, hanging outside a window of the Nakatomi Tower. It helps heighten the tension as we have to watch the scene for a longer period of time, and it really helps capture the taut nature that is rife throughout the ending. Speaking of slow-mo scenes, Alan Rickman's reaction to falling is genuine. They told him they were going to do a countdown, and I believe they let go of him on 2. This makes it so much more impactful, and well, it's as real as you can get, you know. I think the scene in which we see John and Al embrace is great. Over the course of the movie, they've been building up this friendship over the radio, and to finally see them both together, especially both survive this ordeal, it's just a really wholesome moment. I love the surprise at the end with Carl. This just keeps us on our toes and reminds us that this is an action thriller film. It also provides one last jump, and it's great to see Al get over his whole ordeal with killing people. This is obviously something that was mentioned earlier in the film, which is another thing. It ties itself together, and in turn it makes the scene so much more impactful. Oh, and one last thing. Die Hard is a Christmas film, whether you like to hear it or not. Its closing theme is literally Let It Snow. So yeah, I just had to get that last point off my chest. I think we both agree that.
Yeah.
Is there anything you want to add? Or
yeah, because
that's just one of your favourites.
Explain earlier in the film when Alan, John McClane are talking, Al, he asks him why he's riding the desk, and he says, yeah, because he accidentally shot a kid, didn't he? And that's why he'd never drawn his gun since then. So that's the kind of the little twist at the end, is that the fact the guy who shoots him is Al.
Yeah, because when Cole just comes out of nowhere and he points his gun, and you see John and Holly duck, everyone around them, and you see this gun shoot, but you don't know whose gun it is. But then you're like, hell, that's a police revolver, and then you just see the camera pans down from the gun, and you see it like basically his eye in the side.
Everybody's hit the ground, haven't they?
Apart from Al, and
he's just stood there with his gun smoking, and so it's very.
Like I said, McTiernan just puts that one last thing, just that ties up Al's little story in the film, narrative in the film, and it just once again it just keeps us on our toes. But absolutely brilliant ending and a brilliant film.
It is. So. And it is a Christmas film,
yeah.
So. Right, okay, my next one is Planet of the Apes, 1968, directed by Franklin J. Schaffner. Planet of the Apes is a science fiction film based on a novel by Pierre Boulle. It was actually adapted by Rod Serling, who is probably more famous for the TV series Twilight Zone.
Oh, yeah.
And the plot is astronauts led by Taylor, Charlton Heston, awaken from deep hibernation after a near-light speed space voyage. Their spacecraft crashes into a lake on an unknown planet, and the men abandon the sinking vessel. Before bailing out, Taylor reads the ship's chronometer as November the 25th, 3978, 2006 years after their departure in 1972. But due to time dilation, their age was almost the same as when they left in 1972. The men travel through a desolate wasteland, coming across eerie scarecrow-like figures in a freshwater lake with lush vegetation. While swimming, the men's clothes are stolen and shredded by primitive mute humans. Soon after, armed guerrillas raid a cornfield where the humans are gathering food. Taylor is shot in the throat as he and the others are captured. Now, this scene, when the guerrillas appear, and they're riding horses, and they're talking, that scared the hell out of me when I first saw it as a kid. Can you imagine gorillas riding horses and talking?
Armed gorillas as well.
Exactly, yeah. Taylor is taken to Ape City, where his life is saved by a chimpanzee called Zira. Taylor discovers that he's on a planet ruled by intelligent apes who can talk, and that humans are unevolved and are treated as vermin, to be hunted and either killed outright, enslaved, or used in scientific experiments. Taylor convinces Zira and her fiancé Cornelius that he is as intelligent as they are. Dr. Zaius, an orangutan and leader of the apes, seems fearful of Taylor, believing him to be some tribe of human from beyond the ape borders, and intends to have him castrated. Zira and Cornelius free Taylor and his companion Nova and take them to the Forbidden Zone, a taboo region outside Ape City where Taylor's ship crashed. Ape law has ruled the area out of bounds for centuries. Cornelius and Zira are intent on gathering proof of an earlier non-simian civilization. Zaius and a group of soldiers pursue the group, and they take Zaius hostage, where he admits he's always known about the ancient human civilization. Taylor and Nova are allowed to leave and follow the shoreline on horseback and eventually discover the remnants of the Statue of Liberty, revealing that this alien planet is actually Earth, long after an apocalyptic nuclear war. Taylor falls to his knees in despair and delivers the following iconic line: "You maniacs! You blew it up! I damn you! God damn you all to hell!"
I think you should have been in it. Charlton Heston.
Yeah, and that's kind of the plot twist right at the end, and that's why it's such a good film. And it's
was that added in for the film, or was it always?
I think it was always, because the book, I think it's slightly different to the film in the fact that in the book the apes are much more advanced than they are in the film. But yeah, I think it was always in the, because
I know sometimes films just add a twist in just to, but no, that is obviously one of the most iconic twists in film history.
Now, Charlton Heston has been in a few post-apocalyptic films. I mean, he made a Mega Man, which was an adaptation of I Am Legend. He also made Soylent Green, which was set in a, just to let people know, obviously spoilers are going to be in this podcast as well. It's set in the near future when the human population's got out of hand and we're using up, we've almost used up all our resources and things are rationed food, and this company produces this food stuff called Soylent Green, and Heston discovers that it's being made out of humans. So, yeah, this is a few of the films that he's made. But when you look at Planet of the Apes, you've got to look at it in context of what's happening in the world at the time. It's late 60s. You've still got the arms race. You've got the Cold War's at its height. You're only a few years after the Cuban Missile Crisis, so there's a real fear that there was going to be a nuclear war, and people were fearful of that. But then there's also a social commentary in Planet of the Apes of what was happening, particularly to do with class. I mean, you've got like 60s. It was the culture, it was the social upheaval. You've got the
civil rights.
Civil rights movement. You got Vietnam. You got the anti-war protesters and lots of things. And you got this supposedly utopian ape society, but there still is divide. You've got at the bottom, you've got sort of the gorillas who are the brutish warriors. In the middle, you've got the chimpanzees who are like the scientists and intellectuals, and then at the top, you've got the orangutans who are like the elders, the leaders, the religious leaders, and they basically the ones who are in control. And you got Zaius, who was not only in charge of science but also faith, which often doesn't, and they adhere to like the sacred scrolls, and people are fearful. The chimpanzees, Cornelius and Zera, they're fearful about helping Taylor because of the repercussions that could happen. They could, it could damage their careers. They could get accused of heresy and executed. So yeah, this society doesn't always seem as good as it is. And then there's also a little bit people, revisionists, have looked back and thought, well, there's a comment on racism as well, because you've got this archetypal, like Heston at the time was his biggest probably Hollywood star going. He's the sort of poster boy for the white middle-aged men, and he's basically being discriminated against because of he's a human. And so there was a commentary on racism,
and you can see that, can't you?
Yeah, you can. Film. So when I first saw it, I mean, my first introduction to Planet of the Apes was there was a TV series spin-off, and it used to be on a Saturday morning, and I used to watch that. But then when I actually saw this film, it's talking monkeys. But then when you get older and you realise the messages that it's got, it's a really good film, really good ending, really good twist ending. Because I remember when I first saw it, I just did not see that coming at all, and it was like, oh no, he's back on Earth.
It's one of those ones where, once again, like Psycho, it's one of those twist endings where you're like, okay, now that makes sense, doesn't it? You know? So
definitely.
Honestly, like, it's even one for people that haven't even seen the film that know the ending, wouldn't they? And then they'd know the quote as well. But no, brilliant film and very iconic ending.
Yeah.
Right. my next film is The Shawshank Redemption. The Shawshank Redemption is a 1994 crime drama film directed by Frank Darabont. The plot: it tells the story of banker Andy Dufresne, played by Tim Robbins, who is sentenced to life in Shawshank State Penitentiary for the murders of his wife and her lover, despite his claims of innocence. Over the following 2 decades, he befriends a fellow prisoner, contraband smuggler Ellis Red Redding, played by Morgan Freeman, and becomes instrumental in a money laundering operation led by the prison warden Samuel Norton, played by Bob Gunton. The ending: Red, fresh out of prison, follows clues left by Andy Dufresne to its location. Red finds a box buried at the base of a stone wall in the shade of the oak. How does Red know he's at the right location? It's because of the polished piece of quartz previously described by Andy, covering said box. Red picks up the box while checking his surroundings. He sits down. Red opens the box. He picks out an envelope. Inside, a smaller envelope containing a large amount of money. Red once again checks his surroundings. The other item, a letter from Andy himself. The letter reads, "Dear Red, if you're reading this, you've got an out. And if you've come this far, maybe you're willing to come a little further. You remember the name of the town, don't you? I could use a good man to help me get my project on wheels. I'll keep an eye out for you, and a chessboard ready. Remember, Red, hope is a good thing, maybe the best of things, and no good thing ever dies. I will be hoping that this letter finds you, and finds you well. Your friend, Andy." Red gets up and begins to walk across the field at a leisurely pace. We cut to Red, back in his bedroom, the chair Brooks used to hang himself in shot. He opens up his pocket knife and a voiceover Red says, "Get busy living or get busy dying," a line Andy said to him early in the film. He looks up at the structure Brooks suspended himself from. We cut to Red packing his things and he leaves his apartment. The structure reads, "Brooks was here, so was Red." We cut to Red ordering a bus ticket. We see him riding said bus with an excited expression on his face. While this is happening, there's a voiceover Red explaining how he missed his parole and that he's excited for the journey ahead, even though he doesn't quite know what to expect. We cut to Red walking down the Mexican beach. Andy, who is sailing a boat, catches a glimpse of Red. They both have huge smiles on their faces. The camera cuts to a faraway shot. Red and Andy hug, and the movie ends. Now, first off, this is probably one of the most emotional scenes in movie history, and emotional scenes tend to be more impactful, as they can have a lasting impression on us. As well as being one of the most emotional scenes of all time, it is also one of the most satisfying ending scenes of all time. The fact we see everyone who mistreated our main characters get their comeuppance, and the fact that Andy and Red get to have a happy ending, it certainly is a great payoff. The movie makes you think that Red is going to commit suicide like Brooks. Instead he doesn't, and it makes for a great ending, while also being tense. This is the perfect ending for this film, because we can finally see the two best friends on the outside, with their whole lives ahead of them. It's brilliant as it shows the strength of their friendship, the fact Andy was expecting Red to follow through with his plans, also the fact that Red was willing to risk missing his parole to go through with Andy's plans, and the fact that he trusted him. Yeah, like I said, it just goes to show that they are brothers for life, and it's still, because the thing with Shawshank Redemption is it has a whole overriding theme of it is hope, isn't it? You get that from the characters, the story, and this ending is just, I don't know why, it's just filled with hope, isn't it? You know, just to see them meet on the beach. It's some sort of Mexican name. I don't know what the name is.
Yeah, I
saw it on written down. I was like, that's not even a word, but yeah, when they hug and it's like they got their whole lives ahead of them. You know? And once again, it's just the overriding thing is hope, and that's why this ending is so great, because it follows from the previous acts, and it's just, once again, it's emotional and it sticks with you, and everyone knows the ending to Shawshank, don't they? And I like how they kind of, is Red going to go through with it? You know, is he actually going to go to Mexico, or is he going to hang himself like Brooks did? Yeah. And I think that's the perfect thing. So him writing, Red was here too, or whatever.
Yeah, because obviously Andy, he's in prison for the murder of his wife, which he denies, and it's you're never quite sure whether he did it or not. And it's all about little victories, isn't it, throughout the whole film?
Because there's a lot of bad things that happen to him, unfortunate things, but they still, both Andy and Red still keep that hope, and especially Andy, but also Red with his parole. You know what I mean? he still keeps hope that even though he's been there for, what was it, like 30 years or something, that he still has hope, and it's just the overriding theme, and that's why it's on my list. It's an absolute brilliant ending and brilliant film as well.
Okay. Right, my next film. This was one of my choices for greatest opening scenes, and it's got, well, I think, greatest closing scene as well. It's Godfather, 1972, directed by Francis Ford Coppola. So, as we all should know, The Godfather is a 1972 crime film co-written by Coppola and Mario Puzo, based on Puzo's best-selling 1969 novel of the same name. The film opens in 1945 in New York City at the wedding of Connie and Carlo. Connie just happens to be the daughter of Vito Corleone, the don of the Corleone crime family. Vito's youngest son, Michael, who was a Marine during the World War II, returns home and introduces his girlfriend, Kay Adams, to his family at the reception. Shortly before Christmas, drug baron Solozzo, backed by the Tartaglia crime family, asks Vito for investment in his narcotics business and protection through his political connections. Wary of involvement in a dangerous new trade that risks alienating political insiders, Vito declines. Later, Solozzo has Vito gunned down in the street. Vito's eldest son, Sonny, takes command. Vito survives, and at the hospital, Michael thwarts another attempt on his father's life. Outside the hospital, Michael's jaw is broken by NYPD Captain McCluskey, Solozzo's unofficial bodyguard. The Corleones plot to murder Solozzo and McCluskey, feigning a desire to settle the dispute. Michael meets them in the Bronx restaurant where he kills both men. Despite a clampdown by the authorities, war breaks out between the five families, and Vito fears for his family. Michael takes refuge in Sicily, and his older brother Fredo is sheltered by Mo Green in Las Vegas. Sonny attacks Carlo on the street for abusing Connie and threatens to kill him if it happens again. When he does, Sonny speeds to their home, but is ambushed at a highway toll booth and violently murdered by rival gangsters wielding submachine guns. Devastated by Sonny's death, and realising that the Taglias are controlled by the now dominant Don Barzini, Vito attempts to end the feud. He assures the five families that he will withdraw his opposition to their heroin business and forgo avenging Sonny's death. His safety guaranteed, Michael returns home to enter the family business and marry Kay, promising her that the business will be legitimate within 5 years. In 1955, Vito suffers a fatal heart attack. Michael assumes his father's role as Godfather and head of the Corleone family. His first act as Godfather is to order the murder of the other New York Dons. He later extracts a confession from Carlo, who was complicit in setting up Sonny's murder, and orders Carlo's murder. So getting on to the final scene. Connie hysterically confronts Michael about Carlo's death, correctly assuming that her husband was killed on the Don's orders. Michael neither confirms nor denies Connie's accusations and merely holds her before sending his sister downstairs to see a doctor. The confrontation takes place in full view of Michael's wife, Kay, who has been under strict instructions to never ask about the family. Unable to help herself, Kay asks whether Michael really was involved in Carlo's death. Responding with anger at first, Michael calms down and allows Kay to ask one single question about his affairs. She does so, and Michael, as cool and resolute as ever, denies having any involvement in Carlo's death. A wave of relief spreads over Kay's face, but after she leaves the room and looks back, she sees Michael surrounded by his three capos, all hugging their leader and kissing his hand. Looking directly at Kay, Al Neri slowly moves towards the office door and closes it, leaving Kay with a mixture of distrust and stark realisation. This scene is the true final phase in Michael's evolution into a mafia boss. The ease in which he lies to his wife acts as a sign that their relationship has become far more distant since those early scenes, and is a foreboding sign of things to come. In shutting the door on Kay, the Godfather highlights both Michael's decision to close his wife out of his business and the mafia's general attitudes towards a woman's role. While Michael at the outset of the film treated Kay with dignity and respect, Michael is now the archetypal Don, running the family business in a closed office, while the women of the house see to their maternal and domestic duties, those two worlds forbidden ever to collide. The expression on Diane Keaton's face that acts as the Godfather's final shot indicates that, despite initially being relieved by Michael's denial, her trust towards him has been irreversibly damaged. Kay no longer feels she truly knows what kind of man her husband is, or what he's capable of. So, essentially, it's about, obviously, Michael. The whole film, really, I think, is about Michael, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's
really.
kind of centred on him. He comes home from the war. he initially doesn't want anything to do with the family business, but after the attempt on his father's life, that's when he gets involved. He commits basically assassination, goes to Sicily. While he's in Sicily, he gets married. His wife is accidentally killed in a car bomb, which was intended for him. So that kind of embitters him, obviously. He comes back. Sonny's dead. Fredo's in no fit state to take over the family, so it's kind of left to him. So he then ends up becoming the Don. And it's this closing scene that really just cements that he is completely changed. He's now the Godfather.
It's like, because they obviously closing the doors. It's like they've closed the chapter of that part of his life, and now he's the Don, and they refer to him as the Godfather.
Yeah, the Godfather.
Don't they?
So yeah, brilliant ending.
Yeah, absolutely brilliant. And obviously everyone knows what great film it is, one of the best of all time. But yeah,
like I say, if you've never seen this, I will post all the videos online when this podcast goes live.
Very good choice. All right, on to my next film. Seven. Seven is a 1995 thriller film.
Sorry,
you just have to.
I can't resist.
Seven is a 1995 thriller film directed by David Fincher. The film tells the story of David Mills, played by Brad Pitt, a detective who partners with the retiring William Somerset, played by Morgan Freeman, to track down a serial killer who uses the 7 deadly sins as a motive in his murders. The ending. Just to put things into context, John Doe, played by Kevin Spacey, is 5 kills deep. He walks into the police station covered from head to toe in blood and surrenders. He offers to lead the police to his last 2 victims, but there's a catch though. Doe wants things done his way, or he'll plead insanity. John Doe reveals his 6th victim in a remote field outside of the city. Mills and Somerset, along with Doe, are waiting around at said field when a courier service van shows up. The man gets out and says that he has a package for Mills. He then says that someone paid him $500 for it to be delivered to this location at this exact time, 7 o'clock. Somerset opens the box and is taken back by its contents. He tells the chopper to stay back, that John Doe has the upper hand. He runs over to Mills and yells at him to put his gun down. While Somerset is making his way over, Doe says to Mills, "I'm trying to tell you how much I admire you and your pretty wife Tracy." Mills has a concerned look on his face. Doe explains how it is easy to obtain someone's information and that he visited Mills' place of residence. He explains how he tried to live like Mills, but it didn't quite work out, so he took a souvenir, her pretty head. Mills asks Somerset what Doe is on about. Somerset still yelling at him to put his gun down. Mills asks Somerset in a concerned tone, "Show me the box, what's in the box?" As Doe is telling Mills how much he envies him in a much patronising way, Mills says, "You lie, you're a fucking liar, shut up." Somerset explains to Mills that that's what Doe wants, that he wants you to shoot him. Mills still denying everything Doe has said. Doe tells Mills, "Become vengeance, David, become wrath." Mills now begins to beg Doe to admit that she's alive, that she's safe. In response to this, Doe explains how she begged for her life and for the life of her baby inside of her. Mills doesn't know that she was pregnant. David, now holding his gun towards Doe's head, is fighting back the tears. Somerset says to Mills, "David, if you kill him, he will win." We then get the iconic shots of Mills shouting, "Oh God," over and over again in a disgusted tone, his gun still pointing at Doe. Tracy flashes up on the screen and Mills shoots Doe at point blank range, shooting his corpse a few more times. And now these are the reasons why it's on my list. This is a tense, perfect scene for this type of movie. So many things are happening at once that it puts us on edge. I was very scared for our protagonist's safety. The fact that it isn't a good ending, it makes it so much more memorable. I mean, if this would have been a happy ending, yeah, it would still be remembered as a great film. But the bad ending puts it into that classic area for me. I mean, if it wasn't for the ending, we would have never got the iconic "What's in the box" line. Everyone knows that line and what movie it's from, film fan or not. So yeah, they just got that spot on with the ending. The 7 deadly sins are gluttony, greed, sloth, lust, pride, envy and wrath. Doe uses the first 5 as motives for murders. The 6th, he explains how he envies Mills' life. The 7th is committed by Mills himself, by killing Doe and showing his wrath. This is such a great story writing, and it makes such a better watch than if Doe was to just use all 7 of his motives. You know, the fact that it involves one of our main characters and his plans, it makes for a truly gripping watch. In the ending scene, we get great acting performances from all parties involved. They truly do showcase the acting abilities they possess. I love how the ending makes you think. The fact that it gradually bleeds the information out through dough. This only helps you put you on the edge of your seat. And once again, it makes for a much more impactful, much more memorable watch. I love the way in which Mills suddenly realises what Doe has done. It's like a pipe bomb. And like I said before, we get some great acting from Pitt. Particularly that of when he starts to break down. And yeah, that's the many reasons why it's on my list. But I would say the main one is I think it was very smart for Fincher to only make Doe kill 5 people. Obviously, his envy is the 6th deadly sin, and then to make Mills use the 7th deadly sin. It's just smart story writing, and you can tell that some thought's been put into it as well, can't you?
Again, it's not a neat ending, is it?
No.
It kind of because you never find out who Doe is, who he really is.
It kind of ends abruptly,
and it's like you kind of left to think, well, what's going to happen to Brad Pitt's character, and it's
and you just think if that was brought to a close, then I don't think that would be any more memorable, would it? No, it was just that perfect scene for that perfect movie, and I think after obviously Mills shoots Doe, he just gets a wagon comes, picks him up and takes him away, doesn't it? And it's just like the film ends there, doesn't it? But it's just such a memorable scene, and obviously one, whether you're a film fan or not, you'll know, wouldn't you? Yeah. Like the put down what's in the box, like, and all that, so very
good choice.
Thank you.
Okay, my next one is One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, 1975, directed by Milos Forman. One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest is a psychological comedy drama based on the 1962 novel of the same name by Ken Kesey. Now, this actually was played on stage by Kirk Douglas, played McMurphy, and he was going to play it in the film, but it was considered too old. But it's still produced by Michael Douglas, so that's why. Because I think they bought the rights to the actual book and developed the screenplay. So just a bit of trivia there. So in 1963, Randall McMurphy, played by Jack Nicholson, is on an Oregon work farm for statutory rape of a 15-year-old girl. He gets himself transferred to a mental institution to avoid the hard labour. The ward is dominated by head nurse Mildred Ratchet, a cold, passive-aggressive tyrant who intimidates her patients. There he meets an assaulted group of inmates, including tall, deaf-mute Native American Chief Bromden, and also Lord DeVito.
Yeah, my guy.
Ratchet sees McMurphy's lively, rebellious presence as a threat to authority. An orderly tells McMurphy that the judge's time sentence doesn't apply for people who are deemed to be criminally insane, so McMurphy makes plans to escape. Ratchet sends Chief and McMurphy to the shop as a result of this insubordination. While awaiting their punishment, McMurphy offers Chief a stick of gum and discovers he can speak and hear, having feigned his deaf muteness to avoid engaging with anyone. McMurphy and Chief make plans to escape, but decide to throw a secret Christmas party for their friends after Ratchet and the orderlies leave for the night. McMurphy sneaks 2 women, Candy and Rose, and bottles of alcohol into the ward. He bribes a guard to allow this. After the party, McMurphy and Chief prepare to escape. He invites another patient, Billy, to come with them. Billy refuses but asks for a date with Candy. McMurphy arranges for him to have sex with her. McMurphy and the others get drunk, and McMurphy falls asleep instead of making his escape with the Chief. Ratchet arrives in the morning to find the ward in disarray and most of the patients passed out. She discovers Billy and Candy together and aims to embarrass Billy in front of everyone, but Billy manages to stand up to Ratchet. When she threatens to tell his mother, Billy cracks under the pressure and Ratchet has him placed in the doctor's office. Moments later, McMurphy punches an orderly when trying to escape out of a window with the Chief, causing the other orderlies to intervene. Meanwhile, Billy commits suicide by slitting his throat with broken glass. Ratchet tries to ease the situation by calling for the day's routine to continue as usual, and an enraged McMurphy strangles Ratchet. The orderlies subdue McMurphy, saving Ratchet's life. Sometime later, Ratchet is wearing a neck brace and speaking with a weak voice. McMurphy is nowhere to be found, leading to rumours that he's escaped. Later that night, Chief sees McMurphy being returned to his bed. He greets him, elated that McMurphy had kept his promise not to escape without him, but notices McMurphy is unresponsive and physically limp, and discovers lobotomy scars on his forehead. Chief tearfully hugs McMurphy and says, "You're coming with me," before smothering him to death with a pillow. So this is the end scene, is when the chief lifts the hydrotherapy fountain off the floor, smashes it through the window gates, and escapes alone, all while the remaining prisoners, having been woken up by the glass breaking noise, watch and cheer him on. And this is why I've chosen this, because it's quite a sad ending.
Yeah.
But at the end of the film, Ratchet wins and Mac loses. Chief represents a one small victory that McMurphy's attempts to liven the war brings, but everyone else falls right back into line with the status quo that Mac desperately tried to change. Chief knows that someone like McMurphy, who is so full of life, would never want to live after being lobotomized. Being a prisoner on Ratchet's ward was hard enough for Mac without being a prisoner in his own body. After a goodbye hug, Chief makes a choice he believes McMurphy would make for himself by suffocating with a pillow. The scene is hard to watch, as Mac's body involuntarily fights back, but Chief succeeds and he finally feels like he's done all he can do on the ward, later escaping Ratchet's reach. Whether he did the right thing is left up to the viewer. Out of all the characters on Ratchet's ward, McMurphy impacts Chief the most. By watching Mac refuse to take anything lying down, Chief learns how to be as big in his actions as he is in stature, and he feels like he owes that to McMurphy, as without him he would still be silently sweeping the hospital floors at the movie's close. So yeah, quite a sad film. But again, at the end, it's kind of an uplifting film because, McMurphy's inspired the Chief to do that one act of rebellion, I guess. Because what he realises is through the film, he says him and Chief are there because they're court-ordered, but the rest of the patients are there voluntarily. So he just basically tries to make their life a bit better. He
didn't need to, did he?
No, he didn't. But obviously then there's a struggle then with Ratchet, power struggle.
Yeah.
But then in the end she has all the power. And Chief realising that he wouldn't want to live as basically a prisoner in his own body, frees him and then frees himself. So yeah, it's a good film.
I mean, in my opinion, like everyone, I think this is pretty unanimous that this is like one of the best films I've made, isn't it? 100%.
Yeah, I think so.
And it's only one of 3 films to win all 5 of the major Oscars as well. But if you haven't watched it, watch it, because like I said, it's one of the best films. Very, very sad, but very hopeful, very uplifting.
I say it's kind of unsatisfying in a way, the fact that you kind of want it to have a happy ending.
Yeah.
But
once again, it's another one where it's much more memorable. Yeah. The fact that it doesn't,
Yeah. So I think so.
Yeah, no, brilliant film, and
thank you.
I'll be moving on to mine now. My next film is Gladiator. Gladiator is a 2000 epic action adventure film directed by Ridley Scott. The plot: Roman general Maximus Decimus Meridius, played by Russell Crowe, is betrayed when Commodus, played by Joaquin Phoenix, the ambitious son of Emperor Marcus Aurelius, played by Richard Harris, murders his father and seizes the throne. Reduced to slavery, Maximus becomes a gladiator and rises through the ranks of the arena to avenge the murders of his family and his emperor. Now the ending. Maximus lets go of Commodus's dying body, his corpse hitting the floor. Maximus stumbles back, the whole stadium in shock. Maximus, now with a blank look on his face. We cut to a shot of a set of doors. We then come back to Maximus. He takes a few staggered steps forward and raises his hand. He makes a push-in motion. We cut back to the set of doors, and we see Maximus's hand opening them. It is then we realise that we are seeing into Maximus's head. As the door opens, we are greeted with Maximus's property, the path leading up to his house. We cut back to Maximus in the Colosseum. A slight smile overtakes his face. Quintus, a subordinate general and friend of Maximus, grabs Maximus's attention. Maximus says to Quintus, "Free my men. Senator Gracchus is to be reinstated. There was a dream that was Rome. It shall be realised. These are the wishes of Marcus Aurelius." Quintus orders some of the soldiers to free the prisoners. We cut back to Maximus. We see visions of his hand going through a field. We see 2 figures in the background. We cut to Maximus's face. He presents an almost shocked expression. He collapses to the floor. Lucilla, played by Connie Nielsen, runs over to Maximus. Maximus asks Lucilla if Lucius is safe. She nods her head, and Lucius is Lucilla's son. To this news, Maximus shows his pleasure. Lucilla tells him to go to them. Maximus's head falls to the side as he succumbs to his injuries by the way of Commodus. Lucilla begins to cry. We are then greeted to Maximus's body thrown across the floor. The figures in the background turn out to be that of his wife and son. They both have excited looks on their faces. Maximus is walking towards them as his son is running towards him. Lucilla then closes Maximus's eyes and says, "You're home." The three prisoners gather around, along with Quintus and Lucius. We then get a beautiful line from Lucilla. Is Rome worth one good man's life? We believed it once, make us believe it again. He was a soldier of Rome, honour him. Santa Gracchus asks, who will help me carry him? Santa Gracchus, along with Lucius and the prisoners, then carry Maximus's body out of the Colosseum. We then cut to Juba at Maximus's grave. He buries Maximus's statuettes of his wife and son, and delivers his "Now we are free" speech. The film ends. And now, it's weird, because when I was looking around, like, I can't believe it, but Gladiator was never on any of the lists of some of the best endings, and I just couldn't believe it, because to me, this is... Well, obviously, I love this. This is literally one of my favourite films. I know it's like personal opinion, you know what I mean? But to me, this is one of the best endings in film history. It also is one of the most emotional film endings in history, and it's the perfect ending to this film. You know, this roller coaster of a film needed this roller coaster of an ending. It shows the character Maximus. He holds it on to life until he knows the prisoners have been freed. Once he knows Lucius is safe, and once he knows that Marcus Aurelius' dreams for Rome, that they will become true. This in turn shows the immense strength that Maximus possesses. You can see how loved and respected he was from his peers, you know, the fact that they carry him out of the Colosseum and they give him a proper burial. And like I said, it's the fact that he literally the second Lucilla tells him everything's okay, he then dies, because he didn't want to die without all of his wishes, you know. I think this ending showcases some of the most beautiful dialogue in film history. For example, Lucilla and Juba's speeches. It's these lines that make me wonder, how can someone come up with this? Once again, this is one of the most satisfying endings due to Commodus getting his comeuppance, and the fact that people of Rome are finally free. Also the fact that Maximus gets his revenge, something he so dearly wanted. But at the same time, it's a real bittersweet ending because Maximus is dead, but he does get to be with his family in the afterlife. I also like how the ending ties in with certain things throughout the film. Maximus has visions, but we don't know what they are about. We're then shown at the end. This is just a great story writing and great direction. The beautiful music by Hans and Melissa Joa just accompanied the scene perfectly. I mean, I literally mean it when I say it, that the ending would be worse without their music. And yeah, I just couldn't believe that this wasn't on any lists or anything. Like I said, it's one of the most impactful. Once again, another bittersweet ending, but that's the thing, they seem to be more impactful than the bittersweet endings, you know? Yeah,
because you kind of want it all to work out in the end, and you know,
I think
it to be a happy ending.
Yeah, it's easy for us as a viewer to be quite selfish, because like, we want Maximus to live, but in reality, then you take a step back, you're like, okay, he gets to be with his family, so that's much better ending for him, you know?
But quite often in these films, the main protagonist has to sacrifice himself. For the good, for the sort of the greater good.
And that's exactly what goes on.
Exactly.
But it is emotional, isn't it? And
and they gave themselves quite a tough time to come up with a sequel.
How would you come back from that?
Exactly. You kill off your main protagonist.
They've tried, haven't they?
They attempted to.
And I've seen some of the writing that they like try and explain how he's not dead and stuff. But no, I mean, I remember watching this in the cinema and just crying like a baby. It's just, it seems every time I watch it, even if I watch snippets on YouTube, it just you get choked up and stuff, because like you're finally seeing someone who's willing to sacrifice himself, like you said, for the greater good, but he also gets to be with his family as well.
Because like obviously in the opening scenes, that the Emperor Marcus Aurelius is dying. He offers Maximus sort of the guardianship of Rome, cutting out his son Commodus, and so he makes this promise to a dying man, and he upholds his promise, even though he's been put through such, you know, horrendous things happen to him. And it's almost like, you know, his family dies, he kind of gives up any kind of he doesn't care anymore.
No.
He's become, which is, you can understand that. Yeah. So, and then he fulfills, the promise, and then leaves.
Like we said, once he knows that promise is going to be fulfilled, then he passes away. Literally, probably a second after that, because he's probably holding on to everything he has, and then obviously Lucilla, tells him that of course Lucius is safe, and obviously putting Senator Gracchus in position of power, he knows that he's a good friend of him, isn't he?
Yeah.
He's got Quintus there, and he knows everything's going to be okay. Yeah. And hopefully, like I said before, that promise will be fulfilled. He can pass away.
Yeah.
And it's a very beautiful scene, isn't it?
It is. Great film. All right, moving on. My next film is Raiders of the Lost Ark, 1981, directed by Steven Spielberg. We covered this film again in podcast 16, greatest opening scenes, but I think it has a great ending as well. So we all know Raiders opens with the archaeological professor stroke antiquity hunter Indiana Jones meeting with military intelligence. They're interested in why the Nazis are excavating at Tanis in Egypt, and why a telegram they intercepted mentions Indy's old mentor Abner Ravenwood. Indy deduces that the Nazis are looking for the Ark of the Covenant, the chest the Hebrews place a piece of the Ten Commandments. When Indy shows the intelligence men a picture of the Ark, along with telling them the law that whichever army carries the Ark becomes invincible, they now fully begin to understand Hitler's interest and recruit Indy to retrieve the Ark. The rest of the film is a roller coaster ride that takes us from Nepal to Egypt and eventually to an island in the Aegean near Crete. Indy finds the Ark, has it taken off of him by the Nazis, then steals it back again only for the Nazis to finally recover it. The Nazis conduct a ceremony to open the Ark, led by Indy's arch-nemesis Belosh. Oh, that's Belloc.
Belloc. Such a nurse.
On opening the Ark, they only find sand inside, but then it releases spirits, bolts of energy and flames that kill all the assembled Nazis before sealing itself shut. Back in Washington, D.C., the United States government rewards Jones for securing the Ark, despite Jones's insistence that it should be handed over to the museum. The agents assure Indy that the Ark has been moved to an undisclosed location. It's been studied by...
Top men.
Who?
Top men.
The film closes with the Ark being sealed in a crate and reference numbers stenciled on the side, before finally being wheeled down the aisle of a huge, dimly lit warehouse surrounded by countless similar artifacts. So the ending is quite a plot twist. After everything Indy has been through, for the Ark to end up in a warehouse is a bit of a letdown, but it's a punchline to a joke the entire film was setting you up for. The Ark may not be the real prize. Indy may have lost the Ark, but he healed the relationship he had with Marion and stopped the Ark falling into the hands of the Nazis. That may have been the real prize. So, like any good MacGuffin, quite. You look at every Indiana Jones film, right? Temple of Doom, Last Crusade, and Crystal Skull. He never actually gets the artifact that he's looking for.
No, he doesn't.
Sankara Stone, he returns to the villagers. Last Crusade, he can't take seal. Crystal Skull, that goes back to the alien or whatever. So yeah, it's a common theme, I think.
You know what? That's something I never even noticed as well.
But that should be a real, that should be what happens to MacGuffins. You should never actually be able to get it or find.
It's kind of boring if they get it in there. You know what I mean? But
because like earlier in the film when they're talking to the intelligence men and it's never actually implicitly said that the museum are going to get the Ark.
No,
they just assume it that they will. So yeah, and I think it is kind of the biggest build up to a punchline. As well, because it's quite funny.
It is,
and obviously we do see the Ark again at the start of Kingdom of the Crystal Skull.
You do, yeah,
because they visit the warehouse looking for that alien.
Because I believe one of the soldiers kicks the box and it falls over, doesn't it?
But yeah, I think it's a great ending. Yeah, really.
And that's
good.
the thing. No, we don't need to explain all this. Everyone knows Raiders, don't they?
Like I say, a lot of the time, it's like with Lord of the Rings. They say, it's not about getting there; it's the journey you take, and the sort of changes that happen and that you go through, and the experiences you have.
Yeah,
so,
and that's exactly what Indiana Jones franchise is about, the experiences, isn't it? But No, absolutely brilliant film. Like I said, everyone knows how great it is. And very good choice.
Thank you.
Right, my next film is Inception. Inception is a 2010 action thriller film directed by Christopher Nolan. The plot: Cobb, played by Leonardo DiCaprio, is a professional thief who steals information by infiltrating the subconscious of his targets. Like, he just fell into the water off screen there. He's offered the chance to have his criminal history erased as payment for the implementation of another person's idea into a target's subconscious. Now, just for context, that the ending, it happens straight after they complete their mission of planting dreams into Fisher's head, and it kind of like, is it real? Is it not? You know, but I'll just put a bit of context onto it. Right, so the ending. Cobb wakes up in the same airplane seat he fell asleep in. He looks around, slightly confused. He's told that they will be landing in Los Angeles soon, and then we see our other characters awake too. Fisher, played by Cillian Murphy, of course, just thinking that the events that just happened in the film were just a dream. Cobb showing a shocked expression. Arthur, played by Joseph Gordon-Levitt, and I can never get her name right, Aridan, played by Ellen Page, are looking at Cobb with huge smiles on their faces, like job well done. Cobb catches the gaze of Saito, played by Ken Watanabe. He can't quite believe it worked either. We cut to Cobb approaching a customs officer. He hands in his passport as he anxiously waits for approval. The tension is cut when the customs officer stamps his passport and says, "Welcome home, Mr. Cobb." And Cobb reacts to this in a shocked but cool manner and replies, "Thank you, sir." And that's obviously because he was banned from the US, wasn't he? Because he's a career criminal.
Yeah.
He grabs his bag and passes the other main characters, not acknowledging them, as to not be suspicious. He's greeted by his father-in-law, Stephen Miles, played by Michael Caine. We then cut to Cobb's house, him looking confused. He gets out a spinning top and begins to spin it on the table. He then notices kids playing in the garden. They run towards each other and embrace. As this happens, the camera pans to the spinning top on the table. The movie ends. And now this is a brilliant ending because it shows just how risky and intense the movie was, due to the fact that our main characters are just as surprised as we are that their plan actually worked. I love how Cobb is still very wary of his surroundings. Our other characters have huge smiles on their faces, but not Cobb. He knows there's still a chance that their plan didn't work, and how complicated brain implementation can get. Also the fact they could be trapped in the dream world. Each sort of task he passes, arriving at his destination, passing customs, collecting his bag, meeting his father-in-law at the entrance, arriving at his house and finally seeing his kids. It's almost as every time one of these things happens, it kind of makes him less suspicious of his situation. I love the spinning top bit at the end. Just for context, Cobb uses the spinning top as his totem to remind himself that he isn't dreaming. If this spinning top stops spinning, then he's in, that's really hard to say, then he's in the real world. If it doesn't, then he is dreaming. When Cobb arrives home, still suspicious if he's dreaming or not, he starts to spin his spinning top on his table. He focuses on it until he hears his children. In embracing them, he completely forgets about his totem. The camera pans towards the totem and the movie cuts out before we can see if it stops or not. I think this is the perfect ending because it isn't a closed book. We don't know if Cobb is still dreaming or not. It's kind of a bittersweet ending because if Cobb isn't dreaming, then his plan has worked. And he of course can be with his children. If he is dreaming, then his plan hasn't worked and he is stuck in the dream world. This ending stays with you and it makes the movie so much more impactful. And also there's a bit where as it's focused on the spinning top, the spinning top kind of like jutters a bit, like, oh my god, it's gonna fall, and then the movie cuts out before you can even see it. And also throughout the ending we get to hear Hans Zimmer's brilliant theme Time. It's perfect for this film. It just goes to show that the score can truly make or break a scene. So these are the reasons.
I love films that end like that, ambiguous.
Yeah.
That you're never quite sure if it's real or not. And that's
because it leaves you wanting more, doesn't it?
Does,
but
yeah.
You just can't have it, and you always want something you can't have, don't you? And I forgot to mention there's another bit that's very suspicious as to maybe it didn't work. He's still in the dream world because it's probably been like 10 years since you've seen it, innit? Inception.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
When he meets Michael Caine, is obviously his father-in-law at the gate. Michael Caine grabs his bags and he points like he's looking to a taxi, and literally the next it cuts, and then the next scene is him still pointing, but they're in his house, in Cobb's house. So it's like they literally
So it's cut
teleported there. You know what I mean? So but it's never so obvious that he's either in the dream world or he's in the real world, and it's just an emotional scene because obviously what happened to his wife and whatnot and his kids. It's just very nice to see him embrace, and then just Chris Nolan does that Nolan thing of just planting that in the back of your head that maybe it isn't real, but no, it's a brilliant film and very good ending as well. So
good choice.
Right, thank you. You're next.
Yeah, it's The Thing, 1982, directed by John Carpenter. Now I did my films in chronological order.
Yeah, same here.
I've got to say, I think this is probably my favourite film ending of all time.
Yeah.
The Thing is a science fiction horror film written by Bill Lancaster, which I didn't realise until last week that he's actually the son of Burt Lancaster.
You're joking, really?
Yeah.
I always seen that on the poster. I was
I know.
Lancaster, okay, that's weird, but that's cool, though.
Yeah. Based on the 1938 novella Who Goes There by John W. Campbell Jr. So it's set in Antarctica. A Norwegian helicopter pursues a sled dog to an American research station. The Americans witness a Norwegian passenger accidentally blow up the helicopter and himself. The pilot shoots at the dog and shouts at the Americans, that's
You've probably offended all the Norwegians all the way now.
But they cannot understand him, and he's shot dead in self-defense by Station Commander Gary. The American helicopter pilot R.J. McCready and Dr. Copper leave to investigate the Norwegian base. Among the charred ruins and frozen corpses, they find the burned remains of a malformed humanoid, which they recover to the American station. Their biologist, Blair, performs autopsies on the remains and finds a normal set of human organs. Clark kennels a sled dog, and it soon metamorphoses and absorbs the station dogs. This disturbance alerts the team, and Charles uses a flamethrower to incinerate the creature. Blair autopsies the new creature and learns that it can perfectly imitate other organisms. Recovered Norwegian data leads the Americans to a partially buried alien spacecraft and a smaller human-sized dig site. It's estimated that the alien ship has been buried for at least 100,000 years. Blair grows paranoid after running a computer simulation that indicates that the creature could assimilate all life on Earth in a matter of years. Charles is left on guard while the others go to test Blair. They find that Blair has escaped and has been using vehicle components to assemble a small... to go back there. McCready comes up with a test to see who's the Thing and who isn't. So Charles is left on guard while the others go to test Blair. They find that Blair has escaped and has been using vehicle components to assemble a small flying saucer. On their return, Charles is missing and the power generator is destroyed. McCready speculates that the Thing intends to return to hibernation until the rescue team arrives. McCready, Gary and Knowles decide to detonate the entire station to destroy the Thing. As they set explosives, Blair kills Gary and Knowles disappears. McCready triggers the explosives using a stick of dynamite, destroying the base. McCready sits... So this is the end of the film. McCready sits nearby as the station burns. Charles returns, saying he became lost in the storm while pursuing Blair. Exhausted and slowly freezing to death, they acknowledge the futility of their distrust and share a bottle of scotch. As they both eye each other with suspicion, McCready suggests that they'll likely freeze to death anyway, so they should just wait around and see what happens. In the meantime... see what happens in the meantime. This has led to a number of theories hypothesizing which of the two men might be infected. It could either be Mac, Charles, or maybe both. Some theories claim Mac's bottle isn't filled with scotch but gasoline, and perhaps he tricked Charles into proving he isn't human by making him drink it. Some theories think that little smile at the end means Mac is the Thing. The closest thing to a definitive answer may have come from cinematographer Dean Cundy, who said he and Carpenter used eye light to show who was human and who wasn't. If that's true, and you look closely, it's more likely the Thing is Charles and McCready, so I'm going to have to go back and rewatch that and see.
Yeah, no, I'd never caught that.
Well, whether it's McCready or Charles, there's a strong implication at the end that at least one of the two men remains infected by the Thing and its alien powers, which suggests that the story is not over. So what happens now? If only one of them is the Thing, it's quite likely it will eventually assimilate the other human body. And if that's true, it's also possible they could survive longer than normal human bodies. Could they hold out long enough to wait for help and pretend that they're just miraculous survivors? Could they feign death and assimilate other healthier humans? Could they let the ice reclaim them and return to the same kind of stasis from which the Thing apparently came? These are all possibilities, but the overall point remains this story is quite possibly not over, and the version of Earth on which this film takes place could very well be doomed.
And I would probably agree with you that just as an ending, this is probably the ending of all time. Yeah,
because it's so ambiguous. It just leaves it open, which is
first time I watched, because I watched it when I was about 15, when I really didn't appreciate every essence of a movie.
Yeah,
and I was like, what the fuck, man? Yeah. Like, I want to see an ending, but now you can just you appreciate that he didn't go down the route of
it's an obvious route. It's to tie it all up in a nice little bow and neat, ending. But yeah, it just brilliant.
If John Carpenter did, do the nice ending where Mac and Charles survive, and they're both not the Thing, a conversation would be like, "Have you seen the Thing? Yeah, it's a really good film."
Yeah, that's
where as it opens up that conversation, like, okay, who is the Thing?
Mm-hmm.
And it's just it once again, you leave the film wanting more as well, don't you?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm glad that they never tried to go down like the sequel route. I know they've done a prequel, but yeah, I'm glad they never went down the sequel route, and it just stays as a classic. And again, it's so much more impactful of a scene as well.
But then again, it leaves it open for a sequel.
Yeah, which is inevitably going to happen. Some random.
I know we've had the prequel to it, but we haven't had a sequel yet.
Would the sequel ruin it?
I don't know. It depends, doesn't it? It's been what 40 years now. So is it too late to have a sequel?
I think they just leave it as a classic. It's a classic of horror, and I agree. It's probably just for an ending. It's probably the best single ending in film history.
Like a non-ending.
Yeah,
it's great.
Yeah, it's just two guys sat down. Yeah, they don't know who's the Thing. They both could be the Thing. They both couldn't, and it's that question up in the air. But it just makes it so much more impactful, and brilliant choice. Brilliant film as well.
Yeah.
Right, my last film is Avengers Infinity War, and now obviously trying to fully explain the ending to this is very hard because there's a lot of people to get through, and that sort of done it in quite a lot of detail just to warn you. Avengers Infinity War was a 2018 sci-fi action superhero film directed by Anthony and Joe Russo. The plot follows the Avengers and the Guardians of the Galaxy as they attempt to prevent Thanos from collecting the 6 all-powerful Infinity Stones as part of his quest to kill half of all life in the universe. This due to overpopulation. And now, a bit of context, over the course of the film, certain people have been protecting these Infinity Stones which offer different powers, and once they come together, they can have like unspeakable power, but during the whole movie, Thanos, like I said before, he tracks down each of these stones and either causes destruction or kills whoever's in possession of the stone, and he puts it on the Infinity Gauntlet, which is the device that houses all of the stones and harnesses all its power. And this is there's this huge battle on Wakanda, and you think Thanos is defeated, and I'll just leave it here and I'll say the ending now. Thanos, played by Josh Brolin, with all 6 of the Infinity Stones, finally overpowers Thor, played by Chris Hemsworth, and snaps his fingers using the Infinity Gauntlet. A massive flash is sent out, and after a vision of his daughter Gamora, he teleports away from Thor and Captain America, played by Chris Evans. Steve asks Thor, where'd he go, looking around confused and defeated. Bucky, played by Sebastian Stan, comes into shot and says to Captain America, Steve, in a concerned tone. He begins to turn to dust. Steve and Thor look at each other. What's up?
No.
Oh, you just once again
No. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Steve and Thor look at each other with concerned looks. Many of the Wakanda fighters begin to turn to dust. Spaceships are falling to the ground, and M'Baku, played by Winston Duke, shows a scared look. As Black Panther, played by Chadwick Boseman, approaches Okoye, played by Denai Guerrero, he turns to dust, leaving Okoye stunned. We see Rocket, played by Bradley Cooper, and Groot, played by Vin Diesel, together. Groot turns to dust, Rocket saying no repeatedly. We cut to Wanda, played by Elizabeth Olsen, with Vision, played by Paul Bettany. There's a lot of actors in this, played by Paul Bettany. His dead body lying on the ground. Wanda turns to dust. We quickly cut to Falcon, played by Anthony Mackie, as he too turns to dust. We see War Machine, played by Don Cheadle, yell out for Falcon. We then cut to the destroyed planet of Titan. Mantis says, "Something's happened," as she turns to dust. Iron Man, played by Robert Downey Jr., and Star-Lord, played by Chris Pratt, both have concerned looks on their faces. Drax, played by Dave Bautista, turns to dust in the background, quickly followed by Star-Lord himself. Doctor Strange, played by Benedict Cumberbatch, explains to Tony that there was no other way. He then turns to dust. We then hear Spider-Man, played by Tom Holland, say to Tony, "Mr. Stark, I don't feel so good." He falls into Tony's arms. He says that he doesn't want to go, saying please to Tony. He begins to turn to dust. Tony puts him on the floor, and Spider-Man says to Tony, "I'm sorry," as he fully turns to dust. In reaction to this, he cowers over. Nebula, played by Karen Gillan, says to Tony, "He did it." Tony looks distraught as we cut back to Earth. Steve looks over Vision's body as Black Widow, played by Scarlett Johansson, comes into frame. War Machine asks Steve, "What is this? What the hell is happening?" Steve sits down and takes a minute. His response, "Oh God." We then cut to Thanos' cabin on his home planet. Him walking out of said cabin. He kneels down and takes in a deep breath, admiring his beautiful view. A smile covers his face, and the film ends. Now, this is one of the most shocking endings in movie history. I mean, everyone knew something bad was going to happen to the characters, just not them turning to dust. Also, the fact that so many major characters, Spider-Man, Black Panther, Doctor Strange, Wanda, Star-Lord, I truly can't believe what I was watching. As you're watching the ending, shock turns into that gut punch feeling. So many characters dying. What's left of the vision of the living characters, they all look dishevelled and defeated. I mean, what do they do now? I mean, even to the point that Captain America looks like he's done. Yes, Steve Rogers, the embodiment of hope, has been defeated. I also like the fact how the Russos don't waste any time killing our characters. They jump from scene to scene to show our characters' fates. I think they did this so once all of the death scenes are shown, they just hit you like a ton of bricks. This is smart writing and directing. I mean, it's pretty obvious, but as well as being completely shocking, it's also very emotional, especially Spider-Man's death. The look on the living characters' faces as they watch their friends die is truly heartbreaking. I love at the end, they show Thanos as having a huge smile on his face. He doesn't look like a being who's just killed half of the universe's population. This just makes him more hated, and it shows that he is truly a heartless person. And to round the whole ending scene up is Alan Silvestri's Infinity War score. This adds another layer of tragedy and emotion, and it sure does provide another gut punch feeling. But it's hard though, because Thanos, he believes he's doing good, because he's not inherently a bad person. You think, well, he's killed half the population, but loads of the universe's natural resources are coming to an end, and there's so much overpopulation that he literally his only motive for killing half the population is to kill that, you know. So inherently it's not a bad thing. It's just obviously the way about it is bad, and he even goes as far as to kill his own daughter.
Oh, right.
Reluctantly kill his own daughter, Gamora. He didn't want to, but I believe it's the Red Stone, and I don't know if you know Red Skull. Red Skull. To acquire the Red Stone from Red Skull, you have to sacrifice someone's life for pushing him off this cliff, and he reluctantly pushes Gamora off his own daughter. But that's why you're never quite full hatred on Thanos, because he is, in his mind, he's totally right and he's trying to do something nice. But it's just to say it's an absolute clusterfuck I've seen is understatement. Like, literally, there's so many deaths. Like, because there's so many characters in this film. You just saw all the characters are listed off, you know. And the fact that there was so many, you'd maybe expect one or two major characters, but the fact that so many major characters, I mean, Spider-Man, Doctor Strange, Black Panther, they all, Star-Lord, they all die. And I just remember watching it in the cinema, and I was just completely shocked, because when they released Infinity War, we knew there was going to be an Endgame. We knew there was going to be another film, so we're like, okay, obviously this is like that Empire Strikes Back, where the bad guys win, and then we have to get the redemption in the next film. But we just didn't know how they were going to go about it. But nothing can prepare you for that. You know, it's still emotional. It's still, like I said, that gut punch feeling. And it's just to see so many characters that, like, especially me, I've grown up watching these characters. See so many of them die. You know, I mean, it was just completely shocking. But it's just such a brilliant film, and it really is. Like I said, it's like you're getting punched fully, like pummeled by Mike Tyson in the stomach. So that's the reason why it's on my list.
Oh. Yeah, I've never seen it, so I can't really.
No, that's why I was kind of leading it. You know what I mean? But
it's I think maybe some point I'll get round to watching it.
Well, there's, I think, 25 films in the MCU.
Yeah. Okay.
You said it now, so.
Right, cool. So, my last one is Silence of the Lambs, 1991, directed by Jonathan Demme. It's a psychological horror written by Ted Talley, adapted from Thomas Harris's 1988 novel. It's set in 1990, where Clarice Starling is pulled from her FBI training at the Quantico, Virginia FBI Academy by Jack Crawford of the Bureau's Behavioral Science Unit. He assigns her to interview Hannibal Lecter, a former psychiatrist and incarcerated cannibalistic serial killer. Crawford believes Lecter's insight could prove useful in the pursuit of a psychopath serial killer named Buffalo Bill, who kills young women and removes their skin from their bodies. At the Baltimore State Hospital for the Criminally Insane, Dr. Frederick Chilton makes a crude pass at Starling before he escorts her to Lecter's cell. So this kind of sets Chilton up as a bit of a slime bag, and although initially pleasant and courteous, Lecter grows impatient with Starling's interviewing and rebuffs her. As she's leaving, a prisoner named Miggs flicks semen at her. Lecter, who considers this an unspeakably ugly act, calls Starling back and tells her to seek out his old patient. This leads her to a storage facility where she discovers a jar containing a man's severed head. She returns to Lecter, who says the man is linked to Buffalo Bill. He offers to profile Buffalo Bill on condition he be transferred away from Chilton, whom he detests. Buffalo Bill abducts Catherine Martin, the daughter of a United States Senator. Crawford authorises Starling to offer Lecter a fake deal, promising a prison transfer if he provides information that helps him capture Buffalo Bill and rescue Catherine. Chilton secretly records the conversation and reveals Starling's deceit to Lecter before offering a different deal. Lecter agrees and is flown to Memphis, where he meets and torments Senator Martin, then gives her false information on Buffalo Bill. Starling visits Lecter, who is now imprisoned in a cell in a Tennessee courthouse, and requests the truth. Lecter says all the information she needs is contained in the Buffalo Bill case file, which Lecter returns to Starling, as Chilton arrives and has the police escort her from the building. Later that evening, Lecter kills his guards, escapes from his cell and disappears. Starling analyses Lecter's file annotations and figures out Buffalo Bill is called James Gum. At Gum's house she meets Jack Gordon but realises he is Gum, and she pursues him into a cavernous basement and finds Catherine trapped in a dry well. In a dark room, Gum stalks Starling with the night vision goggles, but reveals himself by cocking his revolver. Starling reacts quickly and shoots Gum dead. So this is the closing scene. At the FBI Academy graduation party, Starling receives a phone call from Lecter. He reassures her, "I have no plans to call on you, Clarice. The world's more interesting with you in it." Lecter puts himself at great personal risk to make that call, and his purpose was to find out whether Starling was at peace, and to express his admiration for her. In those brief seconds, one of the most dangerous and terrifying villains in screen history showed Starling more respect than virtually any other man in the entire movie. In doing so, Lecter proves that he's not an unfeeling monster, but a human being, which is perhaps the creepiest aspect of his entire character. He quickly ends the call with a deliciously devious pun. "I do wish we could chat longer, but I'm having an old friend for dinner." Hannibal is calling from an airport in the Bahamas, where he watches Dr. Chilton, his enemy and former incarcerator, get off a plane, and he follows him as he slips into the crowd. And let's be honest, there's something of a visceral thrilling knowing that Lecter's got to eat Dr. Chilton. Yeah. Chilton's a creep, and the general audience consensus is that he gets what he's coming to him. There's an unintentional trade-off for capturing and killing Buffalo Bill. Hannibal Lecter escapes. Clarice and the FBI have basically freed one dangerous psychopath in order to catch another. So yeah, it's a great ending to a film. And again, it leaves that kind of open ending. Yeah.
Which is a lot of the films that we've had, isn't it?
But it gives you more of an insight into Lecter's character as well. He's this serial killer, but he's very articulate, intelligent, well educated, but he just has this one flaw that he kills and eats people. And the fact that he now is free, but he's given the courtesy of phoning her to see how she is and tell her that he's not coming to get her. Yeah, it's just it's very. I think it's quite a chilling ending as well.
It is, 100%.
Yeah,
and it's very iconic as well.
Yeah, puts the phone down. I think he puts his hat on.
Yeah,
and you see Chilton there. And
then he begins to like steadily pay.
Just steadily following and just disappears into a crowd. So yeah, I think that's a very good ending.
Oh yeah, iconic as well.
Yeah, and I think that's it, isn't it?
Yeah, that's everything.
So all that's left to say is thank you for joining us. Hope you enjoyed this podcast. I think next week it's going to be unscripted as well.
Yes, we're going to do unscripted.
So we're basically going to compile our combined list of who we think are the best directors.
So we're not going to do 10 each. We're
just going to have a little debate about it.
Yeah, and we're going to have
some ideas out there.
Single list. So yeah, it's going to be a whole debate on directors. So
I hope you can join us. Thank you very much, and goodbye.
Thank you.